I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. And this is the I Hate Politics candidate interview with Reemey Ghermay for student member of the Montgomery County Board of Education. Sitting in for Sunil Dasgupta, I'm Tula Dasgupta, a freshman at Rockville High School. Full disclosure, Sunil is my dad. If you are a student interested in guest hosting a show, please reach out. I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse, democratic, and sometimes divided societies. As part of the show, we have conversations with local, state, and sometimes federal candidates. For this episode, my guest is not the usual political candidates who appear on I Hate Politics, but Reemey Ghermay, a Walter Johnson High School junior, one of the two finalists running to be the student member of the Montgomery County Board of Education for the next school year, 2026 to 27. The SMOB, as the position is known, is one of the 8 members of the county school board and is selected by secondary students in the county. That is, all MCPS students in 6th grade and up get to vote. Not all school boards around the country or even in Maryland have student members, and even when they have them, they might not have full voting authority. In Montgomery County, they are co-equal with other regularly elected school board officials, except they cannot vote on personnel matters. The SMOB election is on April 22nd. Ghermay's opponent is Northwood High School sophomore, Dawit, whose interview you can find in the accompanying episode. Please be sure to share this episode with any MCPS secondary student you might know. All MCPS secondary students are eligible to vote. Music for this episode comes from the chamber music ensemble, Bach Street Boys. Jerome Amon plays the cello and goes to Lakelands Park Middle School, where Henry Stubbs is the music teacher. Ayush Banerjee plays violin and goes to North Bethesda Middle School, where Agata Miklavs is the music teacher. Malachi Winder plays the piano. He is homeschooled and taught by Dr. Jamila Takali Hanner. They play together at the Levine School of Music under the tutelage of Susan Katsarelis. Here they are playing Joseph Haydn's piano trio in G major. Reemey Ghermay, welcome to I Hate Politics. Tell me about yourself.
I'm a student at WJ. It's my junior year. I started doing student advocacy way back in middle school. I was part of my school's SGA. I ran for SGA secretary in 6th grade and I lost, but still kept trying. And by 8th grade, I was SGA president. But through my time in middle school SGA, I got to hear about an organization called MCJC, or the Montgomery County Junior Council. And that's where I really got my first taste into what county advocacy can look like and what, being the SMOB can look like, right? And also throughout that time, I got to meet SMOB Hana Oluni, who was honestly a big inspiration. Getting to see her work, that's what really inspired me to, maybe this is something that I can do. Maybe I can be someone who can advocate for students, can make students feel like their voice is truly heard on the Board of Education. When I was in MCJC, I was MCJC vice president in 8th grade, and getting to branch out and get to go to organizations like, the Montgomery County Regional SGA, which is our high school counterpart, the SMOB Advisory Council, different organizations around the county, getting to hear from all of them, getting to see what all these students were doing, that honestly inspired me even more.
As a SMOB, what do you hope to get done?
One of my biggest goals for my term is school safety. Right now, I know there have been heartbreaking incidents, right? At Wheaton High School, Blair High School, Blake High School. There's just been so much going on that I know we've heard about as students. And it's really scary to hear about that and feel like this could happen at my school. I could be walking around the day and just someone could be walking past me with a gun. So one of my goals is to better school security. So work with our security guards to better their training and also keep them as permanent positions. Also further implementing the ID policy, making sure that schools are able to use the ID policy to their best. And I know there's been so much disconnect between different schools, right? Like at my school, WJ, we have the ID policy where once you walk into the building, you have to show your ID. Or then versus at a school at Rockville, they have to carry their IDs the entire day. I know it's a school by school basis, but I want to work with schools to make sure that we are keeping school safety as something that can be carried through in all schools. To me, school safety also means keeping our students safe from ICE presence on our campuses. So something that I really want to push in my term is keeping students data safe so that their immigration status is not something that can be seen by outside sources, and also keeping our campuses safe from unwanted law enforcement.
Do you think that the ID policy has worked to improve school security?
I think the ID policy could be a great tool. I think as it is right now, it hasn't been super effective. I don't really see how, flashing your ID at the beginning of the day, like we do at WJ, is keeping us safe, right? Especially because I've heard students at my school who they use like their credit card and they're like, okay, yeah, come on in. And then some schools, it's not being enforced at all. It's not actually something that's being enforced. I do think it can be effective in ensuring that the students who are inside of our school are meant to be there.
So I know at my school, at Rockville, we have to carry our IDs around all day. Is that something you would want to enforce? Like, how would you change it to make the ID policy more effective?
I've heard from students at Rockville where, you do carry your ID all day, which I think is fine. I don't think it disrupts anything too much. But also there is the security, for example. They like push really hard about it. They're very like, you need to have your ID on. You cannot be in this part of the school. I think that is a little bit excessive, right? I think keeping your ID on is a way to ensure that you are a student here. But also it shouldn't be like we're constantly like yelling at students. Gets a little bit aggressive. It is not effective when we're doing that.
So would you say you want it to be consistent across the schools? How would you do it, basically? So would you do it all day? Would you do it in the mornings, just flashing the ID? How would you do it?
So I know that the ID policy specifically is something that it's hard to keep it consistent across schools, right? Every school has their own way of doing it. That's why it is how it is right now. If we are doing it where we have to show our IDs at the beginning of the day, then it's actually being effective, and they're actually looking at your ID. You're actually being identified as someone who does go to the school currently.
That would also mean improving our security so that they would make sure that they're properly scanning each ID, right?
Yeah. So security training, again, is really important. It's very hard to keep them as a permanent position at our schools. It's because, I don't know if you can tell, this is something that I can always tell is like, there's a lot of like rotating security. I think even at WJ, we just recently received a new security personnel at our school. So I'd want to work with them with schools to ensure that, and just as a county, in our county as a whole, to ensure that, security is very well trained, that if we are to implement policies like this, it would be effective. And they know how to keep that, respectful relationship with students as well. I feel like that's something that we also need to be focusing on, is keeping that respectful relationship with students. But yeah, I think increasing the training that security guards receive to be able to handle these issues is something that's super important to this idea, and also just to keeping our county safe as a whole.
Now that we've established that you want better security training, what about police officers? Do you think that they would be a good way to keep ICE out of schools?
I think that police officers are necessary at times. I know there was a big issue a few years ago with the SROs, or school resource officers, and how they were at every single school, but they weren't effective. It was just honestly making things a little more like stressful and worse. When it comes to police officers, I think obviously it's helpful to have them around our schools, to be in the area, in the vicinity. So in case something does happen, they're able to respond very quickly to any concerns or threats. But having them within our schools, I think, is not something that is going to help to that much of a greater extent. I think security guards should be able to handle their jobs to keep the school safe on like a day-to-day basis. But when police officers do need to step in, then that's completely reasonable.
How would you kind of regulate when they need to step in? Would that be calling 911, calling the police officers, or having them available on call?
When it comes to police officers stepping in, it's like kind of a school-to-school basis.
There have been a lot of issues of hate speech in MCPS. How do you balance a student's First Amendment right with hate speech?
As it stands now, hate speech is not tolerated in our schools. I know there have been many incidents which are heartbreaking for so many students. When it comes to balancing a student's First Amendment rights, they're different. The rights that you have at school are different from the rights that you would just have on a day-to-day basis. And school is somewhere that students need to be able to feel safe. Whenever they're at school, you need to be able to feel safe. And that also comes down to feeling like you're not going to be attacked based on a basis of something that's a part of yourself that you cannot change. The reality of hate speech is that not only is it harmful for a student's mental health, for students, but it also can turn into action when other students feel like they have power over another student and can attack them on the basis of a part of their character that they cannot change. We need to have better reporting systems when it comes to bullying and harassment as well. When an event like this happens, there needs to be clear follow-up, and it needs to be handled with respect. I recently talked to a student where they had a bullying incident at their school, and there was no follow-up. They followed a report, nothing happened.
Basically, when you're in school, you also have to follow the student code of conduct and not the Constitution. They have to go hand in hand, but the conduct is more centered around school. So how would you make the distinction between the two in the code of conduct? And do you think that the code of conduct makes that distinction well for hate speech and right to speak, say what you want?
Honestly, the biggest problem with the code of conduct, in my opinion, is that I can't think of a single student who's reading it. If we are making that distinction within the code of conduct, students are not reading it to be able to use that to make decisions or know how things should be treated. So making it accessible to students so that they're able to see, okay, here's what is expected of me, and here's how that might differ from what they might just generally expect with the Constitution.
Yeah, so I think I definitely know where to find it, but I don't think I would read the whole thing either. How would you change it to make it more accessible to students?
We can keep it as it is right now. I know that might be useful for parents or more specific language when it comes to enforcement, but also making a more digestible version. I'd want to work to make a lot of the policies the Board of Education has more digestible, making it easier to understand, shorter, something that students can, okay, yeah, I get that, sure, and then walk away from.
Okay, so let's talk about your report system. You want to change that. How would you change your report system for hate speech, and what would be different? What do you think you would achieve with it?
I don't think a lot of students know where they would go if they had an incident like this. It would take a lot of effort when they've already gone through something that's really hard to find out, okay, here's what I'm going to do, here's all the forms I'm going to complete. So making it clear for students as to where they can access that, and then also requiring schools to follow up, regardless of what the report is. I want it to be followed up at every school.
How would you suggest that it would be followed up?
I'd want there to be at least within, I guess, 5 working days to that's how long a school week is. I want there to be some kind of email follow-up or one-on-one follow-up with the student with a member of administration. I know a lot of schools have restorative justice coaches as well. The student that I talked to, she told me that she was harassed by another student and nothing happened. There was no follow-up. She wasn't talked to. Nothing at all. That's harmful on so many different levels. One, you're not getting to the bottom of what happened, and that the incident isn't being addressed. But also, the student feels like their voice is not being heard.
Restorative justice is often said to be the solution to all of these types of problems. Do you think it works?
Restorative justice, I think, can be useful when it comes to some instance, right? Some things that are, as two students get into a fight. It wasn't a huge thing, and you're trying to talk to both of them, see what happened, maybe come to a consensus, right? But in some instance, I think it can be harmful. For example, I know if I were to get harassed by a student, I would not want to have to sit in the same room as them and talk out my issues with them, right? Especially after they put me through something terrible. I wouldn't want to have to come to a consensus with them, hug it out at the end. That's something that should be taken seriously. And the student shouldn't be forced to have to deal with. Some instances do deserve higher punishment than restorative justice.
Can you explain some of those instances? And also, what would you kind of change to restorative justice to make it so that it was more meaningful, more helpful for both parties?
Harassment of a student. Honestly, what I think comes down to is, was it a fight between two students or was it one student attacking another, right? And I think that's one of the biggest distinctions that I can make when it comes to this issue. When two students are getting into a fight, it can be talked out. And even if at the end of the day, they both still do get a slightly higher punishment because of however strong the incident is or whatever happened, they can talk it out. And I think that will be fine for both of them, especially considering, the student's mental health in that situation, right? But if one student is being attacked by another, then, I don't think it's fair to make the victim have to deal with another situation with whoever harassed them or whoever, was bullying them, whatever situation it was. So I think that's the biggest distinction that I can make.
Another big part of this election, of your platform you mentioned, is mental health. What do you think this crisis tends to stem from?
I mean, as a student who's taking 5 APs right now, I know the workload that students have is incredibly challenging. You have all these classes to manage, your friends, your sports, your activities, and that can be stressful. And I think it's honestly not being addressed well enough, in my opinion. We have the Bridge to Wellness program at all of our middle and high schools. We have all these resources, but what's the point if students don't know about them? Because I can't tell you, like, a lot of students don't even know about the Bridge to Wellness program. So I think making it something that's easier for students to access, and also making sure our students have the opportunity to talk to their counselor throughout the year, that they are able to build that relationship with their counselor, I think is super important. A huge part of that is the student-to-counselor ratio.
A lot of people want more counselors, more school psychologists, but it's been difficult to hire people. That's been one issue of trying to improve it. What do we do if we can't find those school psychologists, school counselors?
Something that I think will help is the boundary study, right? Having less students at every school, I think will help with improving the resource distribution for students. Even when it comes to like class sizes, counseling. At WJ, we have 3,000 kids. That we're not going to have to fit that into how many counselors we have. I hope that will help with the problem, but I still know that there will be an issue with student-to-counselor ratio.
So why don't you talk a little bit about the boundary program studies?
So the boundary studies is something that I'm super passionate about, especially because, well, I have a little brother who's in 6th grade. He goes to North Pleasant Middle School, and I have another younger brother who's a freshman, right? He won't be impacted, but who will be is my youngest brother. He will definitely be impacted by the boundary study. And seeing as I go to WJ, right, we're right next to Woodward High School, he will definitely be impacted. I don't know what high school he'll go to. I don't know what's going to happen with that. And I feel like that's a common consensus. People don't really know what's happening, especially students. I'm fortunate to be on the SMOB Advisory Council's boundary committee right now, so I do have a better understanding of what's going on with the boundary. I do know what the different options are and how that'll affect students, but the people that we need to be hearing from are the people who will be impacted. And even now, with what's happening with Woodward High School, with their the uncertainty happening with whether or not their students will be moved to a different building, that's going to affect so many students, and I want to ensure that their voices are heard. Something that's a part of the boundary study, which is the program analysis, which I do think I can have a bigger voice on. But what's going to happen with that is something that I'm really concerned about, and I know a lot of students are concerned about, is that it limits your ability to apply to programs outside of your cluster. You can't, like, for example, a lot of students apply to RM every year because it's like the strongest IB program in the county. It's a very strong school. It's somewhere that people know, okay, I'm going to be getting a really good education here with the IB program. But other schools with the IB program aren't, quite up to that level yet, for many reasons. One is just how long they've been there, and two is just the resource distribution when it comes to those programs. If we're going to be limiting students' abilities to apply to that program, then we should make every IB program is equal, which I don't think will happen. I think there will still be inequities, and I think it'll be even worse now that students like me who go to WJ, they can't apply to RM anymore. They would have to go to Kennedy. And when you're looking at the two programs, RM will always come out on top. Your education will really sort of depend on what your zip code is, where you live.
Many students are unhappy about the new grading policy that was implemented this year. That includes like the return of final exams, averaging 2 quarter grades for the semester. Do you think that the new grading policy is working? Is it helping students?
The grading policy is actually kind of working a little bit. It's definitely a lot more stressful than usual, but the point of it is to prepare students for the future. And I don't want it to be a situation where, like, okay, we have this new grading policy and we're going to have it for the next 20 years. I want it to be something that is being updated and being upgraded for students, right? So we have this grading policy. We've had it for 1 year. How is it done? What's going on? What are we seeing with students' grades? What are we seeing with students' mental health?
You've said before in your platform that you want academic rigor, but also that it should not stress out students. So if you do this investigation into the grading policy and you find out that it's not working for students, it's not helping mental health, what would you propose as changes? I'd
want to investigate what's not working. Is it the fact that deadlines are harsher now and that students aren't getting a chance to communicate with teachers about, their one-on-one circumstances and teachers aren't being responsive to that? Is it the fact that something's going on with final exams and we need to investigate that further? And changing parts of the grading policy, so tweaking it as we go along. I think, honestly, something that I was really disappointed in with the onset of the grading policy last year was that it kind of felt like an overhaul of everything and that students weren't really informed of until later on in the year, right? So it felt like, here's how your grades are going to be calculated differently. You're getting your final exams. Here's the deadlines. Here's this. And it was like, whoa, everything in 1 year, especially for like me. I was like, my junior year, we're really doing this my junior year. So working to tweak things one by one so that we're not changing things for students. We're not making it confusing. Because I know a big problem with the grading policy right now was, especially towards the beginning of the year, was like students were confused about how it was actually going to be calculated and what was actually changing. It wasn't very clear. So working with the Board of Education, working with students to make sure that whatever changes we make are not just immediate, like we're just doing it all right now, but they're gradual and they're what we've seen is needed by students.
How would you say that you would make big changes as SMOB if you implemented things little by little? So if you want to get something done in a short amount of time, how would you do it little by little?
This is just one instance of something that I think needs to be changed one by one. So grading, I think that's a law on students to change at once. When it comes to other policies, I do want to make big steps in my term, wherever I can. So what I want to do is work with our current SMOB, Anuva. So something that she's worked really hard on, and I think is something that I can really understand, is having period products at all of our schools, menstrual products in all of our bathrooms being stocked. And I want to ensure that we are working as a county to have menstrual products in all of our schools. It's something that, we have the policies in place and we have the dispensers. That's like the most expensive part, right? They're just not being stocked and they're not being maintained. 1 year is a short amount of time to get things done. And it's really hard to get things done in 1 year, but working with what's happened in the past, that I already have the momentum to get things done for students. And also, working with the future SMOB, the SMOB that comes after me, to ensure that whatever I'm doing isn't just going to stop.
Right now, at least in my school, they've been pretty fully stocked. Do you know of any schools that haven't been?
Especially for middle schools, they are not being stocked very well. My school, it's kind of an 50%. You never know. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, or like one bathroom will have it and one won't. But I do know, like as I've done my school visits, students have been talking about how they're never stocked. I need to be visiting schools to see, okay, is it being stocked here? And if the answer is no, working with the school's administration to ensure that we are.
I want to talk a little bit about infrastructure and HVAC systems, which you've also pointed out they continue to not work in some schools. The county and state have said that they don't have enough money to handle this. What are you going to do to get that money? How would you do it without the money if necessary? What would be your plan on it?
Yeah, so when it comes to infrastructure, we need to be prioritizing schools based on who needs it the most. A school like Wheaton High School, for example, they have a beautiful building. We don't need to be focusing directly on them. But a school like QO, where literally their school was actually falling apart, we need to be focusing on schools like that, where we have these huge incidents that are impacting students' learning.
So another big topic in this year's election, and pretty much every election recently, has been the drug and opioid crisis. Mm-hmm. Do you think the problem is getting better, worse?
There's definitely has been more awareness as years have gone by, especially when it comes to, like Narcan is a huge part of, what I want to advocate for Narcan in every single MCPS school.
In your candidate profile, you talked a little bit about getting more lunches added to the menu that fit more dietary restrictions. Can you explain what it actually takes to get those lunches added to the menu? I mean, I've heard a lot of SMOBs promise it, but I don't think I've seen more than 1 or 2 dishes added to the menu.
Yeah, so this is super important to me, especially because I have celiac disease, which means that I am gluten-free. I can't eat anything with gluten in it. And I have been since 3rd grade. And ever since then, I don't eat school lunch. I can't. There's really nothing on the menu. In fact, so I'll look at the menu. If you go to the MCPS website and you look up, they have this thing called, I think, Meal Finder or Meal Viewer, where you can find the menu for your school. And there's an option on the side of the page where you can toggle out any, if you have an allergy, you can click, for example, gluten, that's wheat. You can click the wheat box and it'll cross out anything that you can't eat. And on most days, it's everything is toggled out. Everything is crossed out on the page. Some days we'll have one thing. That's not fair to students. And I think when it comes to students who rely on school lunches, for example, 40% of students are on free and reduced price meal in our county. And so what happens if you're a student like that and you rely on those meals and you have a dietary restriction? I want to work to have at least one option every day at every school that fits the top 5 allergens, right? Or the top 5 restrictions.
If you are proposing to kind of have more options, that means that each school has to order gluten-free options, peanut-free options like that. Mm-hmm. Would that mean making a rule that they have to order it every day?
Yeah.
This one's about career readiness. I think my school provides a lot of career readiness, but it's more like Naviance, digital things. I don't think it's very effective. How would you advocate for career readiness in MCPS?
We currently have the Summer Rise program, which I think is amazing. I actually participated in it last year. I interned in the office of Councilmember Lorianne Sales, and that was an amazing experience. Increasing the options we have with that, because I think currently 1/3 of people who apply get in. And that's not because of we're trying to be selective. It's because community partners have to work with us. So all the different opportunities that we have, so whether that be in Councilmember Sales' office, a community partner has to reach out to MCPS or has to connect with MCPS and provide those spaces. College and career readiness is also about the classes you're taking, increasing course load opportunities at different schools, ensuring that schools have equal access to APs. Some schools might not offer AP comparative government. And then, because that's a class I'm taking right now and I love it. And it's something that really fits into what I want to do in the future with political science, and you're learning about all these different governments, but some other school might not have that. So I think it's something that's super important. And also keeping AP and IB exams free. That's really important to me too.
What would you say about kids who think career readiness, like Naviance and career days, are ineffective? I mean, a lot of people don't like doing it because it just takes away from time that they could be spending doing other things. Would you take it away? What would you do?
Yeah, I definitely get that. I know it can seem like, oh, you're just on Naviance. You're doing, those tests about what career do you want? What career do they think that you should have in the future? I understand that a lot. I think it's still important for some students is the thing. I think there is a benefit to be had.
Well, that's all I have for today. So thank you so much. Good luck on your campaign.
Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you.
That's Walter Johnson High School junior, Reemey Ghermay, one of the 2 finalists running for the Montgomery County Board of Education. You can find her Instagram at Reemey, 4, SMOB. You can find her opponent, Lul Dawit's interview in the accompanying episode. All MCPS secondary students are eligible to vote. If you know a secondary student, please share this interview with them. Music for this episode comes from the chamber music ensemble, Bach Street Boys. Jerome Amon plays the cello and goes to Lakelands Park Middle School, where Henry Stubbs is the music teacher. Ayush Banerjee plays violin and goes to North Bethesda Middle School, where Agata Miklavds is the music teacher. Malachi Winder plays the piano. He is homeschooled and taught by Dr. Jamila Takali Hanner. They play together at the Levine School of Music under the tutelage of Susan Katsarelis. Here they are playing Joseph Haydn's piano trio in G major. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone who wants to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you will listen, like, and share the show as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.